Welcome to the November Board of Education meeting on the 12th of November. We do have one public speaker for the 4 o'clock agenda. Garrett County Board of Education is pleased to receive comments and ideas from our public pertaining to policies, procedures, and/or practices of the school system. We ask that comments be limited to a maximum time of 3 minutes per individual, unless otherwise considered by the board president. There will be no discussion or action taken at this meeting, but may be considered at a future meeting. Issues that are specific to individual employees should be referred to the immediate supervisor for appropriate consideration and review. Rude, slanderous, and threatening remarks or other behavior that is disruptive or interferes with the order of the meeting will not be permitted. Topics excluded from the public comment include individual personnel issues, comments identifying individual students or staff members, matters that are on appeal or may be appealed or have been appealed, topics for which the board schedules formal public hearings, and advertising and solicitation for products and or services. So that being said, Nathaniel Watkins would like to speak about Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School.
Thank you. I want to take the first couple of seconds of my 3 minutes to say thank you very much. So Nathaniel Watkins, I'm representing the school, I'm on the board for the charter school, and the process has been amazing, honestly. So like really enjoyed working with everybody. It's been great. So thank you. It's been a learning experience, and I picked up some new friends. It's been great. So real quick, I know you guys are making some decisions. I have a feeling I know where that's going. And just wanted to read something very briefly. Dear Dr. McCartney and board members, on behalf of the Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School, we respectfully request that you delay the decision regarding our charter revocation. With additional time, we are confident we can finalize our budget, strengthen our federal charter startup grant application, and ensure the school's long-term sustainability. Some updates, we've partnered with charter school consultant Mark Cannon to enhance our grant application, which narrowly missed funding last cycle, but is now positioned to be highly competitive in January of 2025. All required benchmarks have been approved except our budget, which we're actively refining. The Maryland Charter Alliance confirms we must retain an active charter to apply for the upcoming grant. Losing it now would disqualify us. We're committed to meeting all financial requirements, reapplying for the grant, and hosting an open house this winter to boost enrollment. Delaying this decision will give us the opportunity to secure critical funding and a brighter future for SMHCS. Thank you for your time and continued support. Together, we can ensure our school remains a valuable resource for our community. And that is all I have. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathaniel. We're holding today's meeting at Northern Middle School. We have finished with our public comment. The board will go into executive session momentarily and hopefully return by 6 p.m. Under Section 3-305B of the General Provisions Article of the Maryland Annotated Code, there are 3 reasons the board will go into closed session this evening: to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction; any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals; to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to negotiations; to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on legal matters. Specifically, the topics tonight will be 3-305B1, topic including certificated staffing recommendations; 3-305B7, topics including Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School contract addendum and employee contract violation; 3-305B9, topics include CVS Silver Plan copay update and composition of negotiating teams, Unit 1 and GASA. The reason these topics will be discussed in closed session instead of open session is as follows. The personnel topic pursuant to 3-305B1 disclosed above will be considered in closed session rather than open session because they include the discussion of specific employees, which is a confidential employment matter. The legal topics pursuant to 3-305B7 disclosed above will be considered in closed session rather than open session because the board will be receiving specific legal advice from counsel, which is protected by attorney-client privilege. The negotiation topics pursuant to 3-305B9 disclosed above will be considered in closed session rather than open session because of the confidential nature of the collective bargaining process. With that being said, are there any objections by board members to going into executive session? Hearing none, is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
So moved by Jason,
Second.
second by Rodney. Discussion? All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And we are unanimously in executive session. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our November 12th regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. I'd like to thank you all for showing up this evening. First order of business will be a moment of silence, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance led by our student board members. So if you'd please rise for that. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Cadence. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Jason,
Second.
seconded by Sadie. Discussion? All those in favor of the public agenda as stated, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Approval of the consent agenda. Take a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Jason,
Second.
seconded by Don. All those in favor of the consent agenda that's given to us, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The consent agenda is approved. To remind everyone that our closed session summaries, announcements, etc., can be found on our website, and we certainly encourage each of you to look at that at your convenience. Our first order of business is a recognition this evening. It is American Education Week, November 18th to 22nd, 2024. And do we have a representative? Somebody's going to represent teachers? We do? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Right, president of the association. Yes. Mr. Moore is going to make the presentation. So, Mr. Moore,
Okay, so how do we do this here?
you're just going to read that
Just read it?
presentation, then you're going to present the young lady with our recognition.
It's on. Okay. Whereas public education is the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas education employees, be they custodians, maintenance staff, teachers, assistants, school nurses, bus drivers, food service staff, secretaries, and administrators, demonstrate passion, perseverance, and excellence on behalf of all students. And whereas schools are community linchpins bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Education of Garrett County, do hereby salute our dedicated education employees and proclaim November 18th through the 22nd, 2024 as the 103rd annual observance of American Education Week.
Stand up with me. Give it to her. Yeah, we'll get a little photo. Under new business, our FY 2026 budget development, enrollment, and revenue estimates by Ms. Gloria Smith.
Good evening. As Mr. Wood said, I'm here to present a preliminary look at the fiscal '26 budget. These numbers were derived from a template that was provided by MSDE, basically for the LEAs to input their enrollment data by the various programs. So I will just briefly go through this with you, and then if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. Again, this is very preliminary information. On the first slide, you'll see the different categories of revenue that the state funds. Most of the programs, the funding is going up. However, the Blueprint transition funding has decreased about $240,000 this year. And as you know, it will continue to decrease through fiscal '29, after which point there will be no more transition funding. That decrease is about $180,000 a year after this year. Our college and career ready increased only $17 per student, which was not very much of a move at all. Transportation went up about $123,000 this year for fiscal '26. However, you need to keep in mind that we're underfunded on transportation as we were this past year. In fiscal '24, we spent $4.9 million in transportation. This year's budget is $4.7. So you can see that trend continues. Our comp ed, the funding for that rose $283 per student. Our concentration of poverty also went up, and I will get to a slide that explains that in more detail. English learners, the funding rose about $76 per student. Special ed, we went up $802 per student. And additionally, we had about 23 more students under special ed for fiscal '26. TSI, of course, dropped and will phase out after fiscal '26. Our pre-K we saw the biggest increase of $1,470 per student. The NBC salaries for teachers continues at the $10,000 level. However, keep in mind that the bulk of that is paid from the local share, not from the state. So they pay about $3,500 of that $10,000. And then lastly, the Blueprint coordinator, the state does fund us some money toward that salary, and that's fairly stable for fiscal '26. Anybody have any questions on any of that information? If not, we can move on to the next slide, and that will give you an idea of the split between the state and local share. Roughly $56 million is estimated for fiscal '26, and of that, 58% is coming from the local government. 42% of that is from the state. That percentage is changing. As we saw last year, it's shifting more and more to the local share. If you dig further into the details of each program, even though the overall cost looks like 58% is local, that's of the entire cost, but there are 3 programs that the local is not involved with. If you strip those 3 out and just look at the programs that the local does contribute to, it ranges anywhere from 60 to 68% of that program. For instance, the pre-K, the local share is 68% of that funding. The state funds 32%. For the TSI, of course, that goes away, but it's 66% is local funding. The foundation is 65% local funding.
Does the Blueprint coordinator's contribution go down every year? I notice it goes down to $5,500. What's the rationale behind that?
I do not know, because in this template, it doesn't show that. So I don't know if that goes down. I would assume that it would as the Blueprint transition funding goes away.
Yeah.
But I do not know the answer to that. That was,
It was only in the last 2 years that we.
yes, yes, that's correct.
But it's only been in the last couple years if we have received any money to support
that.
the Blueprint coordinator's salary.
I will see if I can find out
Yeah, I
about
was-
that, but I do not
was-
know.
I was just wondering if that's one of those things will phase out.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, last year when we got the preliminary numbers, the coordinator's contribution was like $5,000, and then it
Yes.
changed as
As-
new numbers came in.
Yes.
So
as
I
the
think
funding
it's
changed.
important to concentrate on the fact that these are very preliminary.
Yes, that's correct. If you move on to the next slide, you get a comparison of our fiscal '25 to the fiscal '26 preliminary revenues. And it looks like we're going to get about a $2 million, just shy of $2 million increase. One thing to keep in mind, if you, again, dig into a little further, the state contribution actually declines almost $55,000 in total. $2 million is coming from the local share. That's an increase of $2 million. And the biggest change is in foundation funding. State share of foundation funding, based on this template, dropped $683,000. But the foundation from a local standpoint goes up $760,000. Most of the other programs are just back and forth, but that's really the biggest move. Any questions on that? Again, I just want to emphasize this is very preliminary, and I'm certain it will change, just like for those of you who were here last year, we were up until the end of May getting revised numbers, as you recall, so it's a moving target at this point. If there's no questions, we'll look at the next slide. It's the concentration of poverty, which is the restricted portion. That funding is expected to go up $500,000 because the schools that were received personnel grants this year are moving into their second year, and they should qualify for the per pupil grants. The template that MSD sent out was not updated for this information because they did not have current comp ed numbers. But if I use their rate per pupil that they did show for Yacht Glades, and based on our comp ed report that we're filing Friday, all of these schools should qualify for the per pupil grant, which will give us about an extra $500,000 in concentration of poverty for next year. The personnel grants went up just a little, very little.
Perhaps, I'm sure it's too early to ask a question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do we have any idea as to whether there'll be new concentration of poverty schools next year?
I don't think so. Based on the comp ed report, they didn't meet the threshold.
Okay.
There has to be I think 55% threshold for the personnel grant and a 60% for the per pupil. And I think these are the only schools that qualify.
So we have no new schools on the horizon.
Not that I,
We do not expect to have any
Yeah.
new schools next year.
Okay.
right. Yeah.
And just for clarification, it's a 3-year average of 55%. So even if, when we publish our comp ed farms rates, even if they're above 55% for just this fiscal
still the
year,
average.
that doesn't necessarily mean they would qualify. It's a 3-year average.
Right. Yeah, for instance, Grantsville just missed being concentration of poverty this year. They were at 58%. So they just missed.
And you mean for the per pupil?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they should qualify this year.
Right.
Sorry, Mr. Woods. Dr. Miller, can you just real quickly give everyone a definition of the concentration of poverty schools? Because we keep talking about it and around it, but we haven't really given a quick definition of it.
So I'm not going to say this is a direct quote from the blueprint, but in general, in the blueprint, a community school is defined as a school that reaches a particular threshold of poverty. So it started several years ago where in order to qualify, you had to have like an 80% farms rate or free and reduced meals population. And then every year it declined from 80 to 75 to 70 to 65. Now it's at 55. That's as low as it will go. And so any school in Maryland, according to the blueprint, who reaches a 3-year average of 55% free and reduced meals, or students who are living in poverty, they can qualify for the personnel grant. That provides the community school specialists and the nursing. And sometimes that also gives us a little extra money to support the needs assessment as well, depending on salaries for the required staff. But the personnel grant is to put the staff in place to support the program. After that, the school can qualify for a per pupil grant, and that allows for additional funding to support providing services to the students within that community based on the needs assessment. Does that cover what you were looking for? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any questions on the numbers on this? Again, I calculated these based on their per pupil amount, and they did not have updated information as far as the farm, so I used our fiscal 26 farms data. And lastly, I wanted to share with you our timeline for budget development. November, which we're in, we have the preliminary revenue estimates based on the enrollment. We have the comp ed report ready to go out Friday. So we're on target for that in January. About the end of January, we anticipate receiving the first state aid file from MSDE. So at that point, we should have a little more reliable numbers to look at. Between that time, we'll be working with the directors and supervisors, different departments, working on developing our budgets for fiscal 26, coming up with our cost estimates. Then in February, we'll present the state aid revenue to you. March, we'll have a budget work session with the board. And then May, we will present the superintendent's proposed fiscal 26 budget for approval at the June meeting. Any questions on that timeline?
May I add just a couple things to, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very, very nicely done. When we look at the increase, just to remind all of us a little bit, we will be looking very carefully at the budget. We know what our salary increases are projected to be because we have our contract agreements in place. And we also have projected our health care increases, so we know about those. Other things that we will be looking at carefully in the budget. We've talked to the board, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just to preview, we want to start a culinary arts program at Northern High School next year. So you can look forward to that being a part of the budget. Between different money sources, we plan to reinstitute, reinstitute's probably not a great word, but we do want to work on offering a very targeted assistance summer program to some of our students at, especially at the elementary levels. So those are the kinds of things that I can tell you now. You'll be hearing from us as we go through the budget process and preparation for our work session. One of the things that happens with the blueprint, when you look at a program like the Concentration of Poverty program, which is a great program, but if you look at the different buckets of money, a lot of our money is very program directed, both local money as well as state money. I think we talked the other day, Mrs. Smith, and said maybe 16% at the most of our budget. Do we have a little bit of flexibility in the use of those funds? So, but we'll be working with our principals and the rest of the staff, directors, and beginning to develop a preliminary budget.
Other questions, anyone?
Other questions?
Certainly, thank you for the timeline. That's extremely helpful to all of
You're
us.
welcome. Any questions on the quarterly report that you had for information?
You said the enrollment.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
enrollment, yeah.
I was reading and I was brain dead there
Oh,
for a minute.
Forgot about that.
So we're down at approximately 50 students?
Yes, we're down 50 students from last year. And if you, it's difficult to compare the schools because of the shift in the southern end of the county. But if you break it down by grades, pre-K through fifth grade or elementary, we lost 18. Sixth through the eighth grade, which would be middle school, we lost 34 students. But the ninth through 12th, we gained 2. So that's your net of 50. Yes. Without the shift in the sixth grade to Broadford, they would have actually lost 82 students at Broadford.
In rough numbers, just in rough numbers, what does the loss of 50 students equate to in money?
You're looking at a little over $9,000 a student. So
Short of $500,000.
$500,000, yeah.
Yeah, which is important for people to know that
Yes.
when we you may say, well, it was only 50 kids.
And that's just
50
in,
kids for us is a lot of
and
if
that's just the foundation amount.
Yeah,
So if they
right.
fall into any of these other categories, that's,
it
that's
could be
more.
$650,000,
Right.
depending on the categories they fall into,
right, yeah.
which is,
Because like our comp ed numbers dropped, I think 23 students, something like that. Was it 17? Yeah. Yeah, so say around 20, 18 to 20, something like that. So, that's a loss in that program. So every program,
sure.
that somebody was involved in, it means there's less and less.
Well, I think it's important for folks to realize that anytime we lose a student, we lose the ability to do more for the students that are still with us. And so we count them, every student counts. Every student
Absolutely.
counts. Okay. Any questions about enrollment? Yes, Jason.
Whoops, sorry.
Sorry. Just a question. I know in the past, and you may have done it this year, just wasn't sure. Have we reached out to the students that didn't return to our system to survey why they didn't return? I have my guesses, but did we do those activities?
We forget all the time. We don't have like a formal exit interview kind of thing. We do know that over the years, homeschooling, since COVID especially, has increased. We also know that at the high school, since the age for students to be able to drop out or stay in school, that has an impact at the high school level. We have some students who maybe go to homeschooling before the age of 18. That is a loss for us. And we are trying to reach out to those students, and the schools definitely do. Reach out to those students and families and invite them back and try to support them in coming back. But you'll see a drop at the high school.
Other questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Notice I got Smith.
I got it right, huh? For the record. Okay. Moving on, we are now into continuing business, which is an FY 2024-25. I'm sorry, we're staying with new business, I'm sorry. Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School, I skipped over, so we need to go there next. I think right here would be better, that way they can see you.
So, I'll be very brief in my comments. The last year, the board approved a charter agreement with the Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School. And within that agreement, we had particular contingencies and benchmarks that we needed to work on and meet this year. And those benchmarks needed to be met in order to open a charter school for next school year. As we were meeting with the charter school group and looking at the benchmarks, some of the benchmarks became problematical. So the Swan Meadow Heritage School has asked for an extension on the contract agreement. We have written an amendment to the agreement extending the timeline for opening the charter school and meeting the different contingencies and benchmarks. So my recommendation to the Board of Education is to approve the amendment to the Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School contract, extending the time frame for meeting benchmarks and allowing still for the possible opening of the charter school for the 2026-27 school year rather than next school year. That's my recommendation.
Okay, the superintendent's made a recommendation to the board to extend the contract with the Swan Meadow Heritage Charter School group for one year, moving to an opening of 2026-27 school year as the first year that the charter school would be in existence. That is her recommendation. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to extend the Swan Meadow Heritage School Charter School application.
Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's on the floor by Rodney. We can now have discussion.
I think Brandon's going to tell me I did that wrong. No, I think I may have.
There's also the
Each-
modification of the benchmark dates.
each-
so we
yes.
Probably should have that.
As a part of the motion.
Mr. Woods, I'd like to make an amendment to my motion.
Go ahead.
So I'd like to amend my motion to include the changes in the dates for the benchmarks that will also be contingent on the acceptance of the charter school for Swan Meadows.
Okay, the motion
I'll agree to that.
has been made and seconded that we are amending the benchmark dates to be met, and we are also indicating that through that motion, the earliest that charter school could open would be 26-27. So we can now have discussion.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to commend both groups, both the central office as well as the Swan Meadow Heritage School, and the work that they've done through this process. I know since, wrapping up my 4th year here on the board, I think we've been in discussion with Swan Meadow for some time as far as what we could do to kind of help each other out and kind of help that school continue to move forward. One thing I will ask, because I know that since we are pushing this deadline, is that next year we definitely kind of make a look at, yes, it is going to be a charter school, or no, it's not. That way we can continue to look for ways to have that school continue, if it's not as a charter school, in other fashion as we go through that, not just to kick the can down the road, if you will. So that's what I would think I would ask the board.
Other comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, I reiterate what you said. I do think certainly we want it to work. We've wanted it to work from day one, but this is the year it has to work. I think if we can't make it work this year, it's probably never going to work. So we'll do everything on our part to assist and help and hope and and try to get all the benchmarks met and move forward. Okay, with that said, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor of the motion as stated, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. And it is unanimous. Now we'll move to the comprehensive maintenance plan, which is also an action item. Mr. Wazlowski will make that presentation.
Okay, I'm here this evening to request approval for the 2024 Comprehensive Maintenance Plan for Garrett County Public Schools.
Recommendation?
Where am I tonight? My recommendation is to approve the fiscal year 24-25 comprehensive maintenance plan as presented.
Superintendent's recommended that we approve the FY 24-25 comprehensive maintenance plan that we've had for the last 2 months. I need a motion as such.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Moran, I think, and seconded by Jason. Mr. Van Sickle. Can I have discussion? Is there any discussion about the maintenance plan? Anybody have any questions or concerns? Hearing none, there is a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the comprehensive maintenance plan for FY 24-25. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. And it is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a student report. Cadence.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's been a busy month for students. We have different groups and organizations working all the time. And I just want to apologize if I left anything out for all the students. It's hard to get a hold of everyone and see what they're doing. But I'm not trying to read through all the student reports. You can kind of see just a few things I want to note are athletics. The Northern High School girls soccer team ended their season with a 14-3-1 final, and they got the title of first in the region. The Southern boys soccer ended their season with a 2-3 final record, and that named them the best team in Southern's history. Our marching band at Southern finished in 5th place for their division at the ACCs at Hershey Park. And then the Southern High School football team did a service project along with Krellin to work on cleaning up leaves and as a community service project. And then we had 4 students from Southern go down to the state cross-country meet, and Emily Parks and Ben Bropes were recognized as all-staters. And then also we had 2 students go down to the state golf tournament, and Hank Lewis finished in 8th place. And then we had 3 students who their artwork was selected for the MAEA BWI Fall 2024 exhibition. And then the NHS golf team finished as a top 10 team in the region. So that's what I have for student reports. As far as student council, we have been doing a lot as well. GCASC, which for those of you who don't know, is our county student council board. We had our first general assembly on October the 28th at the Performing Arts Center at Garrett College, led by our president, Cambria Kyle. Within that GA, we had a presentation by the Garrett County Equity Advisory Board, and they worked together student input on school climate in groups. We also had a school morale workshop led by myself and our vice president, and we challenged every school to take an action and boost morale for this school year. We also always have school discussion groups that allow for collaboration and just fostering new ideas amongst the separate sides of the county and grades. And then we also discussed our service projects. And we will be having our fall leadership conference at Havre de Grace High School on November the 23rd. I know a lot of us are heading down for that to represent Garrett County on a state level. And then we also will be participating at the Festival of Trees, and we have decided to have a veteran/military theme. As for the separate school student councils and their school reports, Broadford just mentioned that they will be collecting materials and money for flood buckets that will go towards disaster relief. In 7th and 8th grade at the high school, they plan the 7th and 8th grade homecoming, and they're discussing their service projects for the school year. For the 9th through 12th grade, they planned and carried out their homecoming. They're planning Rem Rumble. They're continuing to work on their light show to be hosted at Broadford Park, which will also serve as a fundraiser for the PBIS schools, I think at least at the southern end. We also approved and implemented the use of microwaves in the school for grades 9 through 12. There was a door decorating competition amongst teachers to boost school morale and showcase school spirit. And then we recently had our first blood drive, which brought in 35 units, and we have 2 more scheduled throughout the school year. And the goal is to reach 101 units, which will not only save lives, but will provide a $1,500 scholarship for a senior. And then we also thanked our bus drivers on National Bus Driver Appreciation Week with a small breakfast. Northern Middle School received the Silent Heroes grant from the Veterans Legacy Program to honor the untold stories of soldiers from the Korean War. And students are currently working on building a Lego Christmas tree centerpiece for the Festival of Trees to benefit the Dove Center. And Northern Middle, alongside Lakin Margroff, delivered an impressive donation of pop tabs for the Ronald McDonald House Charities in Morgantown. And then finally, Northern High School wrapped up their fundraiser. They raised a total of $905. They're planning their War of the Classes, selling t-shirts for that, working on motivational frames for hallways and bulletin board decorating improvement, planning Spirit Week, and obtaining interest in signing up students for the MASC Fall Leadership Conference. And they are also working with their principals on the purchase and installation of vape detectors. Now, I added a new section for this report, just to give the board more of an idea with what's going on with the grade band alignment updates. I just want to start by saying overall, the transition is continuing to go smoothly. There isn't any negatives really that I have to report. A few things I just want to bring to the attention. There was an updated phone policy at SHS, specifically for 7th and 8th grade. Now, going against what we have to just have, you can have it during lunch or you can have it in your backpack. 7th and 8th grade is not allowed to have it on their person at all. It should be stored in their backpacks or lockers. And then some students met with Mr. Edwards to address how the grade band alignment is going, specifically in regards to the schedule. And students had positive remarks for the 5-period day. I do think that was the best plan of action. I am on that committee as well, and it was positive. Just 2 things that I do have to mention to the board. I know that we talked about this at the last board meeting, but I would like for us to relook at having another custodian on staff at Southern High School. It is kind of difficult. I know that those students and the custodial staff are noticing that another one would be helpful to have on site. And then I mentioned that students are praising the schedule. They think that it's the best one we chose. And then for my personal SMOB initiatives and agenda, I want to collaborate and work to visit other schools across the county and just visit with students of all ages, not just the high school or middle school. I would love to meet with elementary school as well. And I'm planning a new video series for the upcoming months to further engage with students and let them know what's happening on a board level. I'm also working with Dr. McCartney on the Equity Advisory Board Committee to provide my input. And then as far as my additional notes, I just would like to thank all the students who participated in Veterans Day. I had the privilege to go down and watch the parade yesterday. And a lot of students put in their hard work, from Krellin, who was in the parade, the JROTC, and our marching band. And that's all I have.
Questions, comments?
I did forget one thing. I also would like to let everyone know that I'm going after the Maryland State Student Member of the Board position for the next school year. Thank you.
Well, certainly good luck. I can't imagine a candidate more qualified than you. Certainly I'm biased, but I'm also somewhat smart, and I think you do a great job. Would also like to wish the Northern Huskies good luck Friday night. I know they play Mountain Ridge in football to get to the Final 8. I'm sure you never thought a Southern football coach would wish a Northern team good luck, but that was way in the past that I did that. So good luck to the Huskies, and we hope they get to the Final 8. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. Let's go ahead and Superintendent. Any board member updates? Anybody wants to? I do know Rodney. You might talk about your new appointment.
Yeah, a couple things. I have served 3 years on the board of directors of the Maryland Association of Board of Heads, and you have to take a 1-year break. That board consists of 16 members, so not every county is represented on the board of directors for that organization. On Friday, I got a call from the president, and they asked me to come back because apparently there was some, they lost some members with the election. And so there were some vacancies, and they wanted me to fill in on on one of those vacancies. So I thought I was going to have a break this year, but I guess I'm back on that board. Also, there's a new legislative, Brian Dulay is a new director of the legislative office at MABE, and John Woolham's retired, I guess, this year. And so Brian is familiar with Garrett County. He said to say hello to you, Tom. He met with you on a grant, I think, a number of years back.
Yeah, a number of years.
But they're taking a little bit different approach this year. They're looking at the board members, helping them set priorities, and they're coming up with ideas for priorities on proposed legislation. I think it's going to be a session where we're going to be reacting to a lot of legislation that's put forth, particularly reductions in blueprint funding. So we'll see. I'll keep you informed about what happens. That's it.
Anything else? No? Jason?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I was able to attend the Accident Fall Festival. That was a great event. I know it's one of their bigger fundraisers. They did a really nice job with that. Next week, I'll be joining Northern Middle School 8th graders for the Maryland Business Roundtable, where we come in and talk to them about making choices for the future and how the choices they make now may affect that future. So we'll be talking to every 8th grader in Northern Middle School.
Katie?
Yes. I was able to, with Dr. McCartney, I'm not familiar with the schools on the north end. I was able to tour Route 40, Accident, and Grantsville schools 2 weeks ago. Pretty impressed with the schools. Give me a little better understanding of what the schools are like on the north end. So.
Okay. Dr. McCartney, you want to give us the superintendent's update?
I do have just a few items. I really want to thank the community for the support that was given to our schools as schools were working in recognition of Veterans Day. That support was really magnificent to see and to experience. And I just want to thank everyone, staff, schools, veterans who were able to join us, who participated in those very meaningful activities for our students. I also want to note that we hosted 2 Coffee with the Superintendent meetings recently, and I appreciate the input from members of the community who were able to attend and share their views. We plan to host these meetings periodically throughout the rest of the year. A meeting coming up that you would read about on our website, but again, to highlight for you, we will have a community meeting on November 25th here at Northern Middle School from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Regarding the proposed relocation of Accident Elementary to the Northern Middle building, creating a pre-K to 7 school, and moving the 8th grade students to Northern High. So that meeting will be held again November the 25th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Another item that will be of interest to our community and our parents and guardians is we just found information today that, and we will be putting this on our website, that the Maryland Youth Risk Behavior Survey will be administered at Northern Middle, Northern High, Southern High in early December. The survey will be posted on the county website for parents and guardians to review. And I want to emphasize that the information from the survey really is very helpful to us in planning student services, support programs. And I also want to emphasize that for parents and guardians, you may There will be a form online, and schools will also communicate with parents, of course, that you may opt out on behalf of your child should you not wish them to participate in this state survey. Finally, just a little calendar reminder that we'll have a 3-hour dismissal on November the 27th. And then schools will be closed on November 28th, 29th, and December the 2nd for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Sorry, Mr. Woods, I do have one question. Superintendent, will the community meeting be recorded for the public, for those that can't make it?
We won't, I am on. We aren't going to video it or live stream it, but we will make a recording of it.
Okay.
Anything else for the superintendent?
Sorry, one more question. And I think that this is already the case, but you can correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but those that have questions that can't be at the community meeting can send those to the central office prior to that meeting?
Yes. Prior to the meeting, after the meeting, any day of the week. The,
Now you're asking me to remember what you told me, Karen. public.comment@garrettcountyschools.org. Thank you.
and since you brought that up, if I may add, this is at any time, be it if you're a member of the public and you have a question about the behavior risk survey, or you have a question or a comment, or you want to give input, food for thought on the northern area proposal, or bus routes, or the budget, we are more than happy, I am more than happy to hear from the public on any topic, and please do feel free to email me directly or email the Public Information Office. That email gets to me as it needs to get to me. So do feel comfortable in approaching us with input.
Would like to take a moment. Some of you are probably saying, who's the gentleman sitting in the middle of the room? Well, the gentleman sitting in the middle of the room is Mr. Matthew Trice. He is our new board member, was elected, and he will be sworn in our January meeting. So, Matthew, you're kind of hidden behind the podium for me, but welcome, and we certainly look forward to working with you. With that being said, we do have a couple people who have signed up for to public comment. We'll say also that the date that was put there said October 3rd, but it's actually Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024 is today. Garrett County Board of Education is pleased to receive comments and ideas from our public pertaining to policies, procedures, and or practices of the school system. We ask that comments be limited to a maximum time of 3 minutes per individual, unless otherwise considered by the board president. There will be no discussion or action taken at the meeting, but may be considered at a future meeting. Issues that are specific to individual employees should be referred to the immediate supervisor for appropriate consideration and review. Rude, slanderous, or threatening remarks or other behavior that is disruptive or interferes with the order of the meeting is not permitted. Topics excluded from the public comment are individual personnel issues, comments identifying individual students or staff members, matters that are on appeal or may be appealed or have been appealed, topics for which the board schedules formal public hearings, and advertising or solicitation for products and or services. With that being said, the first speaker is Ms. Barbara Law, Accident Elementary. Okay. Okay, thank you, Barb. Michael Henderson of the budget. Yes, when he finishes. Yeah, well, sorry. No, you're good.
everyone. The name's Mike Henderson. I'm loosely affiliated with many children. The subject at hand is the funding for charter schools. If you look at the first page, steps to calculate per applications for charter schools. That was printed out less than 90 minutes ago from the state board site. It is the formula for calculating charter school budgets. Many times it has been determined by the courts that commensurate funding by law is the total budget divided by the number of students. Okay, so that's our basis of starting. We're going to simplify here and leave out all the special fundings and stick to just the general funding to get a raw number. If you go to the second page, charter school funding. If we take the total budget and divide it by the number of pupils, we wind up with a number of 16,196, call it 16,000. Because the blueprint for Maryland, 75% of the blueprint funding, 25% can be withheld for administrative cost. Applying that, you can see the math here, and it works out to 8,600 for blueprint funding. Using Law 9109, we apply that to the federal funding, we wind up with like $34. Garrett County government, we wind up with $8,006. Other board funding comes down to $439. If we add all these numbers together, we come up with a number of $15,894. Now, there will be restricted funding added to that, which are left out of these figures. Okay, if I use those funding for Swan Meadows at 54 students, I come up with $858,000 and a little bit more. This first page, steps to calculate. I was in touch with Carrie Wright at the state board, and she told me this form is still accurate. It is still used for calculating funding. When I talked to Stephanie Sims at the Maryland Alliance for Charter Public Schools, she attempted to prove me wrong in my math. This was some months ago. She came up with a number a little bit north of 14,000. This is significantly higher than what has been offered by the board. What I would like all you to do is educate me and tell me where I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Thank you for your information. I'm sure the superintendent, Ms. Smith, and everyone, Dr. Miller will certainly look at the numbers and see if there is something we need to communicate to you. I would, if anyone else wants to speak, you certainly were, I think we're not at 7 yet, so we've still got 4 minutes. If you'd like to speak, you're more than welcome to. Any takers? All right. That being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Jason.
Second.
Second by Sadie. Those in favor of adjourning in public session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.